Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about chitting or not chitting potatoes, and it's a subject that has got me into a little bit of hot water over the years. Now it's one of those subjects you either chit or you don't, and I want to try and explain why I would say that for a new gardener you shouldn't chit, just plant your potatoes. And I'll finish the video by saying why and when I do chit. So I'm telling you not to, but I do it myself. But I want to talk about everything in between and give you as full a picture as possible and explain all the reasons I've got for saying what I've just said. So let's start with some facts first. For those who don't know, basic stuff, but a potato's got a pointy end and it's got a rose end. And chitting involves standing your potatoes up on the pointy end, either in a tray, mushroom tray, a seed tray, or in an egg box, and the rose end upwards. That's the rounded end, the more rounded end, and it's got all the eyes of the potatoes. Those eyes are the growing point of the potatoes and where the plant will grow from. And from those early parts of the season you can chit them, and what this means is that you're starting to grow the plants very, very slowly in good light to keep it nice and small. Because if they get too warm and they're in a dark space, what can happen is you can get these sort of long etiolated white shoots which are no good to man the beast. They'll just break off when you go in the soil. They're completely useless. So the ideal is to store your potatoes somewhere cool, dark and dry and frost free. Normally it's a shed or a garage, some sort of an outbuilding like that, where they're protected from the ultimate cold but they're kept cool so that they don't start growing. Because what you really want is those potatoes to sense that it's spring and then to start growing away. So that's the ideal storage with them and description of the seed potato itself. Now we'll move on to some other facts. So potato chitting is all about taking those potatoes out of seed storage, out of where they've been nice, cool and dark and frost free, and putting them into a warm, light environment and fooling that potato into thinking it's spring. Essentially what you're doing is you're forcing that potato and you're forcing it to grow little chits, which is the start of the little plants at the top. And by doing that, the idea is that you started the potato early, you can get it in the plants and you know it's going to get away good and it's going to grow you a good plant because it's already growing. And what you can do is you can limit the amount of shoots that a potato plant has had by sort of burrowing out any of the extra chits that are on the potato. Ideally you'd want to leave sort of 2 or 3, no more than that. So you can actually cut them off or cut them out, whatever. Use a potato peeler and just gouge them out. And that's perfect and that works fine. All that is true, don't have an issue with that. Now 50 years ago when I was a lad, we didn't chip potatoes save for just 4, maybe 6 of them. So you get one little egg box, put 6 potatoes in, rows end up just to chit those, and they would be the first of your first earlies. And we'd plant them in grow bags or in buckets in a cold greenhouse when the chits had grown, and we'd plant them out probably towards the end of February, and that would give us a first harvest of the year. And by the time we'd finished eating those, the unchitted but grown first early potatoes in the ground would be ready, and we'd start to eat our way through those, and then on to the second earlies. And then back then we had early main crops as well. We'd have early main crops which we'd then eat sort of Christmas onwards, and the late main crops would be from sort of February the next year up until the June. So we were spreading the harvest by having those very early potatoes in the greenhouse, and that was all we chitted back then. But what I do think has happened is as the internet has moved on, it sort of started with gardening news groups in email, and then went to internet forums and then to places like Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. And I think these sort of things have spread, but not in a good way to my mind, because I think what has happened is a new gardener's come along and seeing that some old boy on the allotment somewhere was chitting his potatoes and thought, oh, I'll do that, but he did all of them. And I think that's how these things have spread out. I say, not that it's a bad thing. If you're chitting your potatoes, you're not doing any harm, but there is some harm, which I'll go on to explain in a minute, for the new gardeners. And this is my whole point that I wanted to get to in this video. So when mentioning chitting these days, nobody to my mind ever talks about frost. And this is one of the issues I have with chitting potatoes, because you're forcing potatoes, you're starting them off early into growth, which again is not a problem, but it does become a problem if those potatoes plants are a couple of weeks early. It could coincide with your last frost date, or it could coincide with the plants being above ground when you get a late frost. Now for the new gardener, this becomes a problem because they're not aware of it, and they're trying to deal with so many new things that year, and they won't necessarily have the space that a more seasoned gardener, someone who's grown for years and is chitting the potatoes successfully because they know what they're doing. And this is my issue that I have with people saying it's time to chit your potatoes, because the more seasoned gardener already knows that it's time to chit the potatoes. But for the novice gardener, it's gold dust. Oh, I must chit my potatoes, I must get on with it. But then they're running into that problem, or the possible problem. It won't happen every year, but it could happen. And if they're not prepared and knowing about it in advance, that can cause them huge issues. The second issue really is that of space. Because they're a new gardener, I mean, I've got a big tunnel here and I've got another one over there and a greenhouse at home. I'm prepared, I've got that space, as many of the more seasoned gardeners out there have, and they know where to put them. But for a new gardener who's wanting to grow all these extra plants and is maybe struggling with 1 or 2 windowsills in their house at home to get started, space becomes an issue if you've got tray after tray after tray of potatoes in light on the windowsill chitting, because someone's told them that that's the way to go. And this in itself is my issue, and why I've always said in the past, don't chit your potatoes. It's not the best way at all. So in the past, as I say, I know I have upset people by being so vehement about this and about not telling. You see, my main thing is I want to help people. That's my be all and end all, whether it's on YouTube videos or at home, or if I go out shopping. I always want to help people, and I will do it to my own detriment. I've always been like that, and that's all I'm trying to do here. I'm quite adamant that new gardeners should not chit their potatoes. They should save that space, and they should save possible heartache down the line by running into frost with plants that are above ground. Now, it's not always going to happen, but if it saves one gardener from getting his plants destroyed, doesn't want to bother anymore because of it, then this video has served its purpose. I'm not having a go at anybody else, and in the past I've actually said things like this on video, and I've had other YouTubers going and making a video countering what I've said. There's no need for that. If you chit your potatoes and you do well with it, not a problem. As I say, I chip my own potatoes, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but new gardeners, please don't. For your first year, maybe your second year as well, just put them in the ground. It couldn't be easier. Dig a hole 6 inches deep, put them down the bottom, and then earth them up over the top, and you'll do wonderful, and you'll avoid some of those potential problems, and you won't need to take up so much space at home chitting your potatoes. That's basically it, what I've been trying to say for years. I've just never put it in this structured sort of a way. I've tried to write scripts to explain it all properly, and every time I've tried to record it, it comes out rubbish. So I'm speaking from the heart today, and hopefully I've got the message across without upsetting anyone, because that's not what I'm here to do. I know many people who chit and they're fine with it, and as I say, I do myself. I'll talk about that now. So there are 2 occasions, and 2 occasions only, when I will chip potatoes. The first one is if I want to grow extra early potatoes, ones that I can harvest in June, and I would only grow, sort of like I said earlier, 4 to 6 extra potatoes to grow on as an extra early crop. And I haven't done that for a good 10 years now, so we can discount that one. The second reason, and the most important, is down to weather change. So while I've got my seed potatoes in storage, I'm looking at them weekly and checking. If the weather changes and starts to warm up, the potatoes will automatically think it's spring and start to grow. So a weekly check will show that those eyes on those potatoes, on the rose end of the potatoes, will start to grow. Then you've got no choice. You've got to get them out into some light and warmth and grow proper chits on them. And that's it. That's the only time. And then I will get all of them out. I won't pick one type. I won't pick first and second earlies or main crops or the second earlies. The whole lot come out. If they're grown sprouts, they've got to be out into sunlight and grow some proper chits. Those long, etiolated white stems, useless, and they won't do anything, and they're sapping energy from that potato, which should be going into a growing plant, not growing half a plant, snapping off and starting again. So that's my take on when I will chip potatoes. Right, so that's basically it. That's hopefully covered it in a sensible way so that most people can understand what's going on with the whole process of growing potatoes. You can simply just dig a hole, put your potato in the ground and it'll grow. Many people do that. That's how I do it now, unless we get an early or warm early February and I need to take them out and chit them. Otherwise they just go in the ground bareback and that's the end of it. If you do chit, and I know many people out there do, not a problem with that, because you're obviously a seasoned enough gardener that you know exactly what you're doing. But for those new gardeners, please don't do it. Don't complicate your first years. You've got enough else going on. You've probably got 20 varieties of different types of plants that you want to grow that year. Keep it simple for the first year or two. Just put them in the ground, let them grow and harvest what's there. You could specialise a little bit later, make things a little bit easier for yourselves, change things how you do it as time goes on. There's no rush, you've got the rest of your life to do these things, so just take your time with it. But that's it for today. Please look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Ta-ra now.